Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
I welcome all of our viewers back from last week. I hope you were with us then. We're doing a 2-week series with our guest, Ryan Wood, who has written 2 books that I just really had a great time with. Last week, we talked to him about his book called Growing Up Pinecreek, and this week we're going to talk about his second book, Brush Fits and Other Woodsman Maneuvers. The book on Growing Up Pinecreek was published in 2004, and the one we're doing today was published in 2005, and this program is airing in 2006. Ryan Wood, welcome back to the program. You're so kind to give us so much time and generous, and I just can tell you we had a great time last week, and we look forward to the interview on this book this week. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest is books that do address people in Shoshone County, Idaho, in the Silver Valley, and where Ryan grew up, and we're very pleased to have back our 2 regular panelists to continue our interview this week. Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is Erna Reinhardt, who is Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College, and Janelle Burke will start today's questioning.
Welcome back, Ryan. It was lots of fun to talk about growing up Pinecreek last week and your experiences while you're growing up, but now we're ready to talk about brush fits and other woodsman maneuvers. But what's a brush fit? How did you decide on that title for your book?
Well, I can't claim that I coined the term brush fit. It's a term that's been thrown around my family for years, and it might actually have I don't know, it may have come from farther back, because I was doing a book signing just the other day at Hastings, and somebody came in and said, I know what a brush fit is. So I think it's a more widely used term, but a brush fit is kind of a temper tantrum that usually occurs while in the outdoors and results usually in somebody getting hurt, usually themselves, when they throw it. So it's just something I've seen over the years develop.
When things go badly,
Yeah.
I take it, in the fishing or hunting experience.
Yeah, there's fishing and hunting is a lot more complicated than people might think. So
You miss that great fish, and that's when you have a brush fit.
When the frustration can no longer be bared, correct? Brush fit can't occur then. So.
And it is generally marked by, I suppose, some verbal announcements.
Verbal announcements, as well as physical movements. They're high level, which I talked about in the book. They're very well skilled. If you don't know what a brush fit is, and you can't really truly appreciate them, if you've never seen one, like I get to see, mainly from my dad and a good friend of ours, Cliff Twite, they really perform high level brush fits. They're superior acts of athletic ability.
Consternation based upon what has happened to them in terms of their frustration.
Correct.
Erna Reinhardt.
One of the things that you talk about early on in the book, Ryan, is what's called shed hunting season.
Mm-hmm.
Share a little bit of your wisdom about that whole adventure.
Well, like I stated in the book, I can't share a lot of my wisdom about it because I don't have a lot. No, the whole idea of shed hunting is that you go out and look for deer and elk and moose sheds that fall off every year. It's every winter they drop them, winter to spring. And my younger brother Rusty he's an advocate, just incredible, and he loves to do it. So we spend a lot of time in the spring looking for these antlers and too much time, to be honest. And in doing so, we've kind of created a whole language associated with it that's new probably to a lot of people. So I wanted to enlighten some people into what the sport was about a little bit, and maybe some words you can use and some tips if you ever go shed hunting. But as far as secrets to finding horns, I can't divulge any of that information.
But I was amazed at how many you find in a season. Share that with us.
Well, my younger brother Rusty, he finds around 100 every year, elk and deer horns, and I'm always behind him. I can never beat him and never catch him, but between the two of us, we usually find 150 to 200 horns every year. They're sheds. They're actually sheds. They're not horns, but we call them.
And what do you do with them?
We just mainly just store them. We each have a big room with a lot of sheds in there, kind of people think we're crazy. There's a market for them. You can sell them, but we don't sell too many. I sell a few of my, older ones and the ones that are, more deteriorated. But Rusty doesn't give them up. He's on. I bet he's close to 750 horns in his basement right now.
Wow. Wow.
Before I ask my questions, I want to ask our staff again to put up your this book. That we have a cover of it in our system. Again, I would remind everyone it's called Brush Fits, Other Woodsman Maneuvers, and there it is up on the screen. Come describe that front picture for us. It's quite interesting.
Well, this is a cover that was designed by my girlfriend, Kelsey Bonds, and we do all the covers and the stuff ourselves because we're self-published, and so we built the cover. But the picture is actually 3 pictures combined. I think we maybe did it in Adobe or something like that. But there's actually 3 pictures, and there's a black and white picture of my older brother Ronnie there riding a horse. He shoes horses for a living, and he's very good with horses. We own a bunch of horses in pack, and his friend Kevin Robb. Packing out a bull elk that Rusty and I shot there 2 years ago. And in the foreground there, kind of a illusion type of appearance, is the Phantom Packer, which I can't tell you a whole lot about unless you actually read the book. But that's the Phantom there in the front. We believe. We're not 100% sure, but we believe that's the Phantom.
We believe that beer is a part of the process.
It might be mentioned here and there.
I did notice in the book that from time to time there was some liquids partake by you hunters. Yeah. I think one of the reasons why I like this book and the other one so much, I grew up in the southern United States, and we have our own language too, and I was amazed how much we're like Shoshone County. All the time when someone, we didn't call it brush fits, but when someone really lost it in the South, we said, that person's pitching a fit. Yeah. And so I understand what that is, and I've seen that in action too, and it's quite dramatic drama. But with that, in the book, among other things, you talk about the difference between a mule and a jackass. So would you share that with us? Yeah,
I'd just like to preface it all by the second book is a lot more outdoor hunting, fishing type humor.
Right.
And we spend a lot of time, since I have, got out of high school and stuff, we spend a lot of time in the woods. So that's what a lot of the material is. We are big proponents of horses. We use them to pack in. We always pack way back in, when we're hunting and stuff like that. Spend a lot of time there. But we're not big proponents of mules, and my dad bought one mule one time. His name was Elmer, and the story is basically about Elmer.
Yeah, I want you to tell that story, but you were able to get rid of Elmer, weren't you?
Well, eventually, yeah. And the difference I maintain, if you've ever wondered what the difference between a mule and a jackass is, because it is kind of confusing, is when you buy one, it's a mule, and when you sell it 3 years later, it's a jackass. So that's kind of the information. But Elmer was a mule that we owned that gave us a lot of grief. But my dad, being an animal lover and believing in the, being an ex-teacher and the popular philosophy, no mule left behind, we gave Elmer too many chances, is what happened.
But the day you sold Elmer, it looked like it wasn't going to happen, but it did. And tell us the whole story about how Elmer left the farm.
Well, I had to convince Dad to sell him. Like I said, he didn't want to give up on him, even though he knew that Elmer was the devil. And we finally convinced somebody to buy him, an outfitter from Montana who came to pick him up. And even then, when we tried to load Elmer into the horse trailer, the outfitter's horse trailer at my dad's place, Elmer wouldn't go. He wouldn't go in, and then he started kicking and fussing and created a big racket. But apparently the guy knew a little bit more about mules than we did. He was able to load him and get him in there. And even as he drove on down Pinecreek there, you could still hear Elmer kicking inside the trailer. And we were pretty excited. We gave like a high five and stuff once we got it.
Well, I just thought from these 2 books that you've written that I couldn't be sure whether there was more problem with Elmer the mule or Rusty the rooster, although their end was very different.
Yes.
Rusty didn't leave the farm, but Elmer did.
Yes.
Yes. Chanel Burke.
People go fishing and people go hunting. Is it a recreational thing? Is it really, are you doing it for the fish and for the meat, or are you really doing it for the recreation and the fellowship and the kinds of good times that you have, the adventures that you have while you're in the woods?
I think it's a combination of both, but the majority of it is what you're talking about, the camaraderie and the stuff, and and just, it's kind of a tradition in my family. We did grow up on elk and deer meat, and I still eat it all the time. I liked it a lot better than the beets, but and so we used to try to tell Mom that we had to go hunting all the time because we had to get food, which she didn't really. She saw through that, but. Really, and I write about it in this book. There's something about it to me. It's the magic of being in hunting camp every year and being there with my grandpa Art, who came up for years from California, now lives in Post Falls area, and is just getting to the point where he can't go with us anymore. Just spending those times and those memories with my brothers and my dad, and some of the other people that have been with us, and Cliff and Brady and those guys. So there's a lot to it for me. I mean, like I said in there, for me, really, it's the one place I want to be. When I want to get away, that's the one place I want to be, and it is relaxing to me, and just being there with those guys. So it's a big part of our life and the way we were brought up.
Reinhardt.
Share with the viewers, Ryan, one of the stories that you share in the book about how you're going hunting with the horses, and it's snowing, and the snow's getting deep, and the horse kind of decides to do his own thing.
We have this horse. I don't even know what it is. It might be an Appaloosa because it has spots, but it's really a small white horse with black spots, and being a real small, intimidating looking beast. My dad named it Genghis, like after Genghis Khan or something. But anyway, this horse, we were riding along, my dad and I one day riding in about 6 miles to get to our hunting spot, and snow had stacked up pretty good. It was almost 2 feet. It was probably 18 inches deep, and it was cold. It was freezing morning, pretty typical. And I had my brother's gun, Rusty's gun, in my scabbard on the horse there because I left mine down at college because I had it down at school at University of Idaho. And anyway, the horse, I got off to walk and lead the horse because my feet were freezing, and every now and then you got to get off and move and get the blood going again. And as I was leading the horse along, Genghis stopped and laid down. And a lot of times horses will do this. They'll lay and roll in the dirt or in the snow or whatever. And the horse started to roll, and I thought, I got to get that gun out of the scabbard before that horse rolls on it. And I reached for the gun, and then I remembered it wasn't my gun. And so I just let it go because I didn't want to risk injury. So the horse rolled on Rusty's gun, and I didn't tell Rusty about it. Rusty did shoot a bull 10 days later or 7 days later or so with the gun, so apparently it was still on. I didn't tell him about it. After that, I told him. I said, "Oh, good thing that gun's still on."
Exactly.
But
Great.
That stuff happens.
A term you hear from time to time, and dealing with rural areas and life and fun is something that you dealt with in this book, and you talk about this high-tech redneck. Why don't you share with us what you mean by that?
Well, I'm kind of mocking us. A lot of my humor is very cynical about ourselves and what we do and myself.
But still a great appreciation for your life growing up.
Definitely, for sure. High-tech redneck is basically I'm mocking my dad in the fact that he struggles with new technologies that come along. He's the old dog, new tricks type, and so he doesn't catch on to new technology very well. But anyway, we started using cell phones now, which is amazing. You get up high enough on some of these mountains, you get great service, and so you can shoot an animal or just be anywhere, and you can call somebody and say, hey, and you're top of the world. So from our tent, which sits down off the ridge a little bit, where we camp every year, there's one spot in the tent that you can get good cell service, but you have to have a few conditions. You have to have a guy, you have to sit right in the right location by the wood stove, and you have to, on a wooden stump, and then you have to have a guy standing behind you with his arms out into the sides, preferably with a beer can in his right hand, we found works best in order to get
See, I knew that would come back in.
Yeah.
It has other purpose other than drinking it.
Yeah, and it's been proven. People are going to read that and not believe that that's the case, but you just have to be there to witness it go down. But you can actually get cell service from our tent if the conditions are right.
And certainly a beer can's far less expensive than some of these fancy antennas.
Yes, or
satellites.
stuff, yes.
Yeah.
Satellite uplinks.
Just shows what one can do. I do want to quote from the front of your book a couple of things. Now, you confessed before the program and disappointed me that you actually wrote these, and I was hoping your family had written, but
Well, maybe I didn't then.
maybe you didn't. I don't know. Maybe I misunderstood. But the first one I want to read is from Ron Wood, and that's your father, right?
Yeah, these are the reader's comments after reading the book. You know how
After they've read the book.
yes.
And your father said, "Not an accurate depiction of me. I am seriously considering legal action, but I'm struggling to find a lawyer to represent me." So it sounds like the lawyers are on your side.
Yeah. I don't know if the lawyers are on either side.
But Cliff, one of your friends,
Cliff Twite, yes.
Twite, said, "The kid is no brighter than a box, that box over there." That was kind of an insult to you, wasn't it?
It is. He's a very dramatic person. Anytime
Yeah.
he comments on somebody's intelligent, he always points it at something like a box or a rock or something.
And then Ronnie Wood, your brother, he
Yeah.
kind of questioned some of the accuracy. He said he tends to have a selective memory in regards to most things in the world. But
I told him to write his own book.
that's a good answer to that. And my final one would be your mother, wonderful mother. I believe Sheila Wood
Yes.
is your mother. And she said he tends to exaggerate a little here and there, but he has always been a good boy. That's a nice way to close out the quotes. Yes. With that, we'll go to Janelle Burke.
This may be an impossible question, but do you have a favorite story in the book? One of the ones that's just the kind of thing that has always been a favorite with you. If you had to tell a story, that's the one you'd tell.
Well, there's two that stand out to me. One's the Bull of a Lifetime, which I tried to tell from three different viewpoints, and I liked the way it turned out. It's the same story told three times in a row by three different people. But I think my absolute favorite story that when I read my own stuff, I laugh at it, and when I write it down, it makes me laugh just because I know everybody and all the characters involved. But Hilly and the Pike is a story about a big pike that I caught one night with Dad and a good friend of mine, Jason Hillman, who's now an elementary principal in Sheridan, Wyoming. He was with us, and that story to me just stands out as just the way it was written. I kind of have some references to some famous literary works in there as well, mainly Moby Dick, and I just think it really turned out well. It makes me laugh. When I read it, it just fits. The two guys that were with me that night, my dad and Jason Hillman, it just fits. So that's probably my favorite story in the book. It's called Hilly and the Pike.
All right.
Share with us a little bit about the process that you went through when you wrote both of these books. I mean, did you ever think of yourself as a writer?
I never have, I still don't consider myself a writer, for that matter. It's weird for me. I've been decent at it, and when I finally actually started the process, I really learned a lot. And the whole editing process is really where the work is. For me, the writing was easy. It came easy when I started to write the stuff. And the editing process took some time. But, when I first started to get down, I had a person by the name of Chris Ronaldo, who's a surveyor down in St. Mary's, who really pushed me to do it, encouraged me to do it. And once I started to write it and let him read it, he would, very positive feedback. He's one of those personalities that gets, one of these low-level humorists, I call him, like myself, that gets a kick out of stuff. And he really encouraged me. And then when I got into the process of doing it and self-publishing, it really ends up now, looking back through all the work, it's kind of neat. It's really neat that the product is there and finished. But I've never considered myself a writer, and I teach, U.S. history is my passion, and economics, and I've never been into, English and that type of stuff, and so it was work for me. The nice thing about my books is they are written with, a specific language from the Pinecreek area, North Idaho area, so I can get away with poor grammar because that's the way, I kind of write it into the book. But as far as the process went, the whole self-publishing process, I learned so much throughout it. It was pretty cool. It was.
How, as I indicated earlier, the first book was in 2004, and then Brush Fits was 2005. Very close together. Did you finish the one before you started the second one?
I actually started, I finished writing the first one, but I was still growing up Pinecreek, but I was still in the editing process and the publishing process of growing up Pinecreek when I started the second one, and that is why I knew it was coming, it was on the way. So they actually overlapped a little bit.
How long did it take to write each one?
Growing up Pinecreek probably took me 4 to 6 months writing on the side. I'm so busy with everything else I do. It's just 4 to 6 months to write it. It's not a huge work, literary work by any means. and Brush Fits was probably September of 2004 until June of 2005, the writing process.
Pretty close to the same, a little bit
Yeah,
longer.
6 to 9 months,
Yeah.
probably top end.
That is interesting. There is one other story, and it's okay for us to, on this program, to refer back to the other book too, which is Growing Up Pinecreek. And after going through both of them, I can't remember for sure, but I think what I'm going to ask is in Growing Up Pinecreek, I was just fascinated with the stump. You know, you've had times with the mule, and you had time with the rooster, and that object just really had a hard time getting rid of that stump. Would you want to tell that story?
The story of the stump was the last story that I wrote. Matter of fact, I tossed a whole chapter out of the original Growing Up Pinecreek and wrote that story as the final story that I wrote. The nice thing about these books is when you write short stories, you know, they don't have to be you don't have to write from beginning to end, the way they come together. But the stump story was the last one I wrote, and it came back to me. The whole memory came back to me. We had this large red fir stump. It used to be a tree, which I stated in there, which all stumps were at one time. And we cut it down because it died, and Dad was worried about it falling on the house. It was pretty close to the house, so he had one of his logger/hunting buddies come over and fall the thing. And then he instead of trying to remove the stump from the ground, which was a lot of work, we knew.
It's a large stump.
Yeah, it was big. It was probably 36-inch diameter stump. He kind of carved some wood out of the top of the stump, put dirt in it, and we built a rock wall around the base and made a flower garden out of it. Or beet garden, I don't remember.
In the front yard.
Oh yeah, it was in the end zone. It was in the south end zone of the football field.
That could cause hazardous.
Oh, it caused a lot of problems. It broke up a lot of touchdowns. But so eventually he decided to remove it, and so the story, the emphasis of the story is this battle, this war we waged against the stump, and a lot of eventually the neighbors all knew we were doing it, and they'd stop by and check in, and we knew the heat was on to get it out, so we had a lot of pressure, but we had to battle this stump for a while, and
it didn't happen all in one day.
No. We had some setbacks. Mm-hmm. Some people got grounded, and I got some trouble for some stuff. It's a pretty complex story. You're gonna have to get the book, I guess, to read it.
Oh, I already have.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to the viewing public.
Other people, yes, you bet. I'm sure they won't innocent, but I just thought that was an incredible ordeal. It took a long time, and there were a lot of hazardous things happen before it got removed.
The premise of my whole life, and it's paraphrased by this stump, is that my life was so simple that the stump stood out as a big story to me, and that's why I wrote the story. Here's this battle with the stump, which is pretty arbitrary to say the least, and pretty minuscule in a sense, and it was the focus of my life for a month and a half. And looking back now, that's what's so great about it was my way I grew up, and that was it.
And to respect Janelle, who doesn't want all stories to end without people reading the book, why we'll let readers find out if it still is there as a stump. Janelle.
Going into the woods and hunting and fishing, there's a certain amount of danger in those kinds of things, and yet you talk about them in humorous ways. Can you share with our viewers how you manage to work those two thoughts together, the danger that's there, but yet seeing the humor in some of the situations after they've occurred?
Well, I hope that nobody thinks I'm taking light of any, the aspects of hunting and use of firearms and fishing, everything else in the woods. We take everything we do very seriously, and so hopefully that's kind of told through the story. So when you're hearing the story, reading the stories, I hope nobody thinks that I'm making light of the situation, because it is, I was always brought up to respect guns and firearms and everything else as we go, and so I don't want anybody to think it's recklessness that's out there. I'm trying to focus on, from the humor standpoint, what was really, the funny part of some of the things that we did out there. So it's in the back of my mind, but it wasn't, my number one goal is to make people laugh. And so if anybody, it reads into that, then, they're reading too much into it, that I don't take those things, serious, that aspect of it, because it is, definitely a very serious aspect of being in the outdoors.
Were you ever lost in the outdoors?
There's, lost is.
Lost is a relative
I've been turned
term.
around. It's like abnormal versus weird. Lost versus turned around. I have never in my life felt lost, but there's been a few times I've been in the woods. We hunt in the same areas over and over and over again. And so now it's all like my backyard. But I I felt a little turned around from time to time. When the fog rolls in every now and then, it's hard to find the right ridge or the right spot. But
And what do you use for location? Do you use the finger to the wind? What do you use?
we don't. Well, Dad's against all the high tech stuff, and nobody has any GPS. So basically, we navigate on our own. We've been there, we know where it's at, and we don't even carry maps and stuff like that anymore because we know where we're at all the time. And if something does happen, we know how to get out of there or get back. So, actually, Rusty and I are pretty good in the woods, and my dad's okay. And Cliff, he's kind of lost a lot. We got to drive. No, I'm kidding. But we just pretty much navigate off of knowing where we've been, stuff like that.
You're not lost when you get out there.
That's
right.
That's right. You're not lost when you get out.
Before Erna asks her next question, I do want to say to our viewers that the books that we're talking about are at Hastings Bookstore in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, but also you can contact Ryan Wood directly through area code 208-777-1136. Again, 777-1136, and that area code 208 is in Idaho. Erna Reinhardt.
Being the mother of two boys, I totally understand now how boys are so fascinated by firecrackers. I mean, my kids, when it comes to the 4th of July, they just go nuts. You had what you called in your book bottle rocket wars, and you also had a neighbor that I think had some access to some dynamite, and that must have been incredibly wonderful as a young boy growing up. Can you share some of those stories with us quickly?
They knew better than to let us get our hands on the dynamite, but those is Ray Doe's worked for the Bunker Hill Mine, and so he had some that we used to dig fence post holes with. This is talked about in growing up Pinecreek. But we did have a fascination with explosions, and we used to. Luckily, nobody ever lost any major body parts. I don't think that I can remember. But we used to have bottle rocket wars every summer around the 4th of July. We'd go out and mess around and shoot, small explosives at each other and stuff like that. That was pretty typical.
And no one lost a finger or anything?
No, I lost a girlfriend over the whole deal. She got hit in the eye, but that was.
Well, I'm sorry we had to end on that note.
Yeah,
hope we wouldn't have to do that. But she's okay.
She did. Yeah, she was.
Okay, we must make that point.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the last 2 weeks we've been reviewing 2 books of Ryan Wood's. One's called Growing Up Pinecreek last week, and this week it's been Brush Fits and Other Woodsman Maneuvers. We consider him a delightful writer with great humor, but also seriousness, and talking about what life is like in a rural area growing up. And now Ryan Wood is an educator, as like his father had been, and his sister is also in the field. And we hope that you've enjoyed the program as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Invite you to be with us again next week when we'll interview someone on another subject. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.